Note-taking for consecutive interpreting. David Violet here. We are going to take a look at some of the techniques, but also the bigger picture about note-taking for consecutive and just consecutive itself. Consecutive is something that's a little bit like playing a piano, I like to say in my courses. It's something where you, of course, in the piano you get to sort of do it over and over again if you're playing from a score, and when you do interpretation, of course, you're always waiting for the next unexpected thing that comes up. The whole thing is a matter of following a speaker who will go wherever she or he wants to go. But it is still very similar to a musical instrument, where it just takes a lot of practice in order to get every number, every name, every nuance of style, every logical link from one point to the next, to get the right tone. It's a matter largely of practice, but it's also a matter of getting down your notes so that everything is there, at least to the extent necessary to jog your memory, so that you can produce your interpretation accurately, faithfully, completely, and confidently, pleasantly, and also quite quickly. It is something that takes time. You need to make a commitment. Say, I am going to learn this. And it's a lot like a musical instrument, or it's a lot like learning the foreign languages you learned. You decide to do it, and you just commit to the time, commit to the work, because that's what it takes. But doing all that work the wrong way would be a terrible pity. And what I would like to help you with is for you to be as efficient and effective as possible, so that every minute of practice is something that is working for you, and no part of that minute is working against you because you're working on bad habits or bad technique. I know the feeling. You just are constantly having your attention divided between writing the notes and listening, and we find ourselves, when we're first starting this process, or maybe after many years, if you haven't really stuck with it and figured it out and practiced it to the point of being proficient, the same problem keeps coming back. You realize that you've written something, but it distracted your listening and you did not hear something. Or you come across something on your page and it's a mystery what on earth that may mean. Or you are listening, and as you write, you're constantly wondering, what should I write? I don't have a symbol for that. I don't know what to write. I'm a little bit lost. And then all of a sudden, the whole thing is starting to go off the tracks because we're not concentrating on the listening. It's a little bit like driving a vehicle. You are constantly watching ahead, attentive to anything, because an accident is something that has to be avoided by all costs. And in interpreting, an accident is when you end up not hearing, not listening, not registering, and you will not know what to say in a case like that. I have a course online, and I also do coaching, and occasionally we have a free practice session, a guided practice session where I teach. I'm one of the most important aspects of that practice session is that you learn how to practice. There is a way to practice that is most fruitful, and mainly about how you critique someone, how you help someone else, and how you get someone else to help you to nail down the techniques and really become proficient through practice. Today we are going to look at several aspects of the note-taking method that I teach. The whole idea is there is a series of, there's so many aspects actually, but there are a few core aspects that I'm going to go through a few of them today. When you listen to someone speaking, it's a flow of speech, just like I'm speaking now. Whatever I say will influence what I say next, and it may change my plan, even though I may have something of a plan. Speakers may have an outline, but frequently they diverge, right? They go off and they They will not stick to even a prepared text that they may have provided you in the first place. So speech really is a flow of unpredictable and pretty messy information. It's just coming at you. And one of the first techniques that we teach is that you need to chunk it. You need to turn it into bite-sized parts. Parts that you can chew, parts that you can separate off and make them manageable. That's true with almost any task. Break any task down, any long, involved, difficult process. Try to break it down into mini tasks, mini parts, and then digest and manage each part, which is manageable. So in speech, we're going to call these the idea. The idea is something that means it's generally a sentence. When someone starts an idea, generally there's something of a subject, a verb, and an object. Of course, there may be many add-ons, many qualifiers, many dependent clauses, etc. But generally speaking, we can say that the idea is close to a sentence. So we're going to break this chaotic or at least unpredictable flow of speech into chunks. And the chunks are roughly sentences. And these chunks are something we'll call ideas. And we put the idea in a box on the page. I say box because we've got the two sides of the column delineated, and we are going to write our idea in there, and then we are going to draw a line and say, okay, that's the end of that idea. I've seen so many of my students' notes where they seem to be taking pretty good notes, but they don't draw this horizontal line under each idea. So what you have is, again, the problem of this continuous flow, whereas that's the problem you want to overcome during your note-taking. You want to delineate the end of an idea. It's part of making it manageable. And then you may link it to the next idea, which will be below that line. And then another line to delineate the end of that idea. So the whole idea here is to break your message into parts, to draw a horizontal line under the notes for that idea, and then just keep going like that down the page. And so we talk about the idea, then the horizontal line going under each idea, and then we may link these together again. So a person may refer to a logical link, maybe implicitly or explicitly saying, and therefore this happened. So the term therefore is an explicit logical link. Or the person might say, and then 5 years later, that happened, which is a temporal link. So we'll look at links a little bit, and we will look a little bit at the margin. The left-hand margin has a special role to play. And then earlier I was saying that the idea is pretty much a sentence, a subject, verb, object, and that will depend on the language. Some may be subject, object, verb, or even other orders. That depends, and you will need to take your notes in the way that works best for you. So we will talk about the SVO unit. It means subject, verb, object. And then in another video, we will be looking at how the SVO is put into virtual columns, and then the virtual columns are written in a diagonal form, and so on and so on and so forth. We have lots of concepts to teach, and I really would like to teach them to you. I would like you to be able to become proficient. It takes, in 1 full year of practicing very hard, I was not quite proficient, at least not enough for the university I was going to, and I had to do another year, so actually it took me 2 years. I know you may think that that's a very long time, but it's not. You know, in your profession, you can find time to work on this with a colleague. There's a lot of work to do alone as well, and it's worth it. You need consecutive for the exams at major international institutions, and to tell you the truth, learning consecutive, and by consecutive, I mean with notes. You can't really do what we normally call consecutive without notes. So by learning consecutive, you break things down, you examine the process closely, and it makes you a much better simultaneous interpreter as well. So, you know, consecutive is not only going to, with notes, is not only going to get you out of a lot of situations where the speaker just won't stop talking and you're not going to be able to remember everything. You're going to have to take notes. Not only will consecutive with notes get you out of those situations, but it will make you a much better simultaneous interpreter as well. So let's move on. And what I would like to do is, there is a video of me going through some of these techniques. It was at the American Translators Association from October 20th to 24th, 2020 online, and I gave a talk there where I went over these techniques. And by the way, out of 41 evaluations, I got 31 excellent and 10 good and 0 fair and 0 poor. So I did it. I think people were quite happy with my talk. I might show you a little bit of that in the video as well. So now let's take a look at me at that conference explaining about the techniques that I just went over, going from chunking to the horizontal line to links and to the margin to SVO units. So let's get going. Here we have covered the first part of my talk. Let's go on to part 2, which is how the page is organized. We're going to break a message into parts. Any complex thing should generally be broken up into manageable parts. And that's what we do as interpreters. And we are going to listen to each idea and say, okay, I've got enough for now. And that will be my first block of notes. And then I will put a horizontal line underneath that block of notes. And then I will use links to connect those lines. These links may be logical or time links. If there are any, you may want to put links in there to connect them again. We will use subject, verb, object units, or for some other languages, it would be subject, object, verb, etc. And we will also write in virtual columns, which I'll explain very soon. And we will also use diagonal writing. And I would like right now to give credit to Andrew Gillis, whose excellent book on note-taking for consecutive interpreting helped me to formulate all of this, even though, of course, I learned it all back in 1980, mid-80s, and had read many books and taught it a lot. His book is excellent. I recommend it. So you have the idea, then you have the horizontal line under each idea. But let's take a look at the idea. Let's say we have, here's the Australian ambassador giving a typical speech. We could put these lines, if we're going to look at it in text, after each idea. We're going to say that these are ideas, and then they are going to be put onto the page in notes. So we have the idea, and here we're going to reduce it to just one word, which is part of the exercises we do. So look, here we've got, good morning, everybody. I'd like to congratulate you, etc. You've been doing such an excellent job on all of you've been doing. This is one of the most important dates, etc., etc., etc. So this is the way the notes would look. You have the main idea, and then you have a horizontal line under each idea. As we said earlier, they will then be connected using, okay, so it looks like that if you're using a page that's divided into two like I do, and it will end up looking a little bit like that because each idea will be of a different length. And if you're using two columns, it starts to look like that with the idea in each little box. Put a double horizontal line when you finish a major section. That's a little hint, little piece of information. So your links will generally go in the upper left corner of each of these little boxes. Logical links or time links. And these would be things like the car is too big and therefore we must downsize, or the other way around, we downsize because the first car was simply too big. Or you could just have two things that are one after the other, or you could have using but, whereas, or however. You are hungry, but don't eat, etc. So we call that opposition. These links will go in what we call the margin. The margin is an area off to the left. Those lines are not drawn. They're just in your mind, although in some techniques you do, right, draw that line. So you see the overview with the link and the idea in each box. And here we would see the links as little words. And for example, the wolf was lurking in the woods, but the piggy 1 built his house out of straw. And also poor piggy 2 also was a fool and did so. However, piggy 3 built his out of brick. That's just an example. So now we'll go on to SVO units. The idea here is your basic ideas will be sort of a sentence made up of a subject, verb, object. So your idea has been reduced to one word in the beginning, but now we're going to put it into these SVO units, subject, verb, object, or sometimes it'll actually be subject, object, verb. Depending on the language, you can adopt what works best for you. Depends on the language. You see that some languages are one way, some are the other. So you have these ideas in their little boxes, and then they start looking like that, SVO units. And then you will start to write them in virtual columns. So the idea behind virtual columns is and the virtual columns is something that we go to in another video for you. So I hope you learned something. I know it went by pretty quickly. If you liked it, if you think you learned something, please give me a like below, subscribe to my channel, and most of all, tell us what you think. Give us your comments or your questions. Down below, there's an area for comments and questions. So please feel free and write what you really think. And one more important thing, I have a free course on symbols. Symbols is something that's very handy because you can write so fast and it has such a clear meaning. So having symbols is extremely handy. So use the QR code that's appearing on the screen, or use the code that is below this video on YouTube, if you're seeing this on YouTube, and click on that link and go to the platform where you can take a free course on symbols, and I hope that will help you. And so keep practicing, practice your consecutive, practice your simultaneous, use the right techniques, take a look at the free course on symbols, and I will see you at the next video.